Hello, and thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar on reporting out and making connections in a POGIL classroom. This is the last in a series of 6 webinars being produced by the High School POGIL Initiative and the POGIL Project. And here, this is me. My name is Lori Settlemeyer, and I will be the host for this evening's webinar. This is me with my dog Kramer. And I am going to be talking tonight to get you started with some basic information about POGIL. So if you're new to POGIL, this will be helpful. And if you've attended one of the other HSPI webinars before, this might be familiar to you, as I give an overview briefly about where POGIL came from and what POGIL is doing. And then at the end, I will help wrap things up with information on how to find more resources that will help you implement POGIL in your classroom. So I certainly hope you are motivated by this evening's presentation, and we're trying to provide you with as much support as possible so that you can make POGIL real in your classroom. This is our presenter for the evening. It's Lee Foy. This is Lee in a very stunning photo, and I'm going to let Lee introduce herself and tell us how she makes POGIL work in her classroom. And hopefully she'll tell us where she is in this photo. Lee?
Hi, everybody. I am an AP Biology and Chemistry teacher in York, Pennsylvania. I was looking at our participants here about when they first heard about POGIL. I first heard about POGIL at an ACS conference about 10 years ago, and I immediately thought, wow, this is the best thing since store-bought bread. I became an avid fan and a classroom user. And then about 3 years ago, I was really happy to have the chance to work on the High School POGIL Initiative that Lori was telling you about. Last summer, my husband and I had the opportunity to travel to New Zealand and work with high school teachers there who were interested in learning more about POGIL. This picture was actually taken at the Fox Glacier on the South Island of New Zealand. My experiences with the New Zealand teachers there confirm that good teachers, even on the other side of the world, share common challenges in trying to give our students authentic learning experiences. And POGIL activities are a very powerful tool in the toolbox for effective teachers. And I agree with Melissa that I have become a better teacher by learning how to facilitate them in my classroom. So it's my hope that we can share some good ideas tonight about how to do this in the classroom.
Great, thank you, Lee. And as you came into our room, you were greeted by our chat moderator, Melissa Hemling. Melissa is a science teacher at Beaver Dam High School in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. And I have a picture of Melissa right here. And this is Melissa with her 2 boys, Owen and Cole. These little guys keep her on her toes. She is a HSPI curriculum writer and has been teaching chemistry and biology for the past 9 years in Wisconsin. And she has been using POGIL activities in her classroom for 6 years. She feels, she states that her use of cooperative groups and guided inquiry learning through POGIL activities has helped her earn the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching from President Obama in 2009. So we're very proud to have Melissa as part of our POGIL community, having received such a wonderful honor. And so I'm going to ask Melissa in the sidebar in the chat if she could just say hello and let us know what she will be doing now that school is out for the summer. I know she has a pretty busy schedule. Okay. Very good. Great, Melissa. Have fun with microfluidics. Sounds like a busy summer. So because we have some participants joining us tonight that have maybe never experienced POGIL, I'd like to just briefly go over a little bit about what POGIL is and where POGIL came from. And if you are familiar with POGIL, this might also help you get some perspective on where this is coming from and what it's about. But first, before I get started with that, I just want to have a disclaimer about tonight's event. events and all of the webinars in this series. These events were not designed to serve as a replacement for the hands-on training that you would receive at a POGIL workshop. Instead, these webinars are more meant to be casual and conversational so that classroom teachers who are currently implementing POGIL can have an opportunity to share their personal experiences and anecdotes. So we hope these insights will help you see how POGIL theory translates into actual classroom practice, and that they will give you some points to think about when you're considering how POGIL activities can fit into your specific classroom and curriculum. So if something sparks your interest tonight, I want to encourage you to attend an event if you can. Information on upcoming events is available on our website, as you see there, www.pogil.org. We have some events this summer, various workshops taking place in conjunction with larger conferences and some one-day introductory workshops open to the public. And we also have some summer multi-day regional meetings. So these all offer training on how to specifically implement it into your classroom. So tonight we're going to talk more about the practitioner side of things and how Lee and Melissa are actually implementing it into their classrooms. So POGIL began in the mid-1990s. It started with a group of undergraduate chemistry professors who became dissatisfied with the traditional format of lecture classroom, and they started looking for alternatives. So these professors started investigating learning theories and research on how people learn, and they found the ideas of constructivism and cooperative learning really resonated with them, particularly because these three findings kept coming up over and over. First, that teaching by telling does not work for most students. Second, that students who are part of an interactive community are more likely to be successful. And third, knowledge is personal. Students enjoy themselves more and develop a greater ownership over the material when they have an opportunity to construct their own understanding. So these professors created specially designed activities for students to complete in groups, and these activities followed the learning cycle. They focused on core concepts and encouraged a deeper understanding of the course curriculum. So the process-oriented piece of POGIL, the cooperative group work, and the GI, the guided inquiry, all follow the learning cycle. Each activity begins with data and information presented in a model through the exploration phase, and then it's followed by a series of leading questions that are carefully scaffolded to guide students to the desired conclusion. So this is the concept development or concept invention stage. And then they all end with important questions to give students an opportunity to do something, to use the knowledge or concepts, also known as the application phase. So their ideas were met with success, and they received an NSF grant in 2003 to begin sharing their methods with others. So the professors hosted workshops and presentations at conferences and other large events. And then high school teachers became interested in these ideas and started asking for materials to bring POGIL to the secondary school level. So what is HSPI? This stands for High School POGIL Initiative, and the project pursued funding, including that from Toyota USA as a major funder. And in 2008, the High School POGIL Initiative, HSPI, was launched. There are three goals. The initiative first intended to develop high school POGIL activity collections, and then second, they wanted to work to train high school teachers in POGIL, and third, the initiative aimed to develop a network of high school implementers. And the initiative has indeed begun all three of these. Teachers like Lee and Melissa have met and formed networks to come up with ideas and develop strategies. And in fact, this year, HSPI's first activity collection was published. So these activity collections are available if you're interested from Flynn Scientific. So you can visit their website to look, or you can inquire further on the POGIL website. We try to keep them at a reasonable cost and in a usable format for high school teachers. Some of the features of the materials are shown here on the screen. You see this little graphic that shows one of the flyers advertising. So there are activities that are well structured and integrate extension questions and assessment questions. They start with clear objectives and then progress through the learning cycle. They also offer background knowledge and prerequisites, as well as the all-important extension questions to help students extend the learning to other things in the classroom. Now keep in mind that the network of implementers are volunteers. Your presenters tonight are doing it on a volunteer basis, and I think that really says something about these people and their level of commitment to promoting something they've used and they've experienced a success with. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Lee, and she's going to start off by reviewing the goals of this evening's main presentation.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Tonight, I am really excited to talk with you guys about 3 important teacher skills that are needed to successfully facilitate a POGIL activity. These include different ways to uncover student thinking in a process that we call reporting out. I'm also going to talk about tips on how to direct the pace at which students work through a POGIL activity. And then finally tonight I'm going to talk about how to link the concepts in a POGIL activity to what comes next in the classroom progress toward understanding the concepts in that unit of study. All 3 of these skills are very important for teachers in the classroom trying to facilitate a POGIL activity, but we're going to start with what I call the crown jewel of the POGIL activity, and that is reporting out. Before I talk about reporting out and what that means in a POGIL activity, I want to take just a minute to reflect on the importance of listening in the classroom. How many times do we, as teachers, actually take the opportunity to uncover our student thinking before a formal assessment, right? I think we might not be so shocked at a poor performance on tests if we did. If we're going old school and we're only delivering instruction, where we as the teachers are doing the talking, the only talking, that we are going to have a false sense of what our students know. If it were only so easy for students to learn what we quote unquote cover in class, right? I will share with you the first couple of times I ran a POGIL activity in my class, I was shocked. Here were my students talking about science concepts. As I walked around the room, the groups were working and talking, and what I was doing was listening, and it seemed really strange at first. And then the realization hit me about how powerful what was going on with my students truly was. I was uncovering student thinking. And of course, for the magic to continue, I needed to become a more effective POGIL practitioner. I can assure you, and I'm sure Melissa will also agree, that we've had our share of train wrecks in the classroom, and we've had to modify and change things that we've done in the classroom to try and minimize those times. But the power of making student thinking transparent to teachers when they can do something about it is one of the reasons why I'm such a big POGIL fan. So I want to start off very quickly with a quick little poll, and I want to ask you guys, how often do you have the opportunity to uncover student processing in your classroom? You know, I know that for me, when I have a chance to actually listen to my students and have a chance to kind of eavesdrop with their thinking, that's a really powerful moment for me with as a teacher. And the other time that I know that I get to really have a chance to think about what my students are thinking about is when I have them do journal writing. And we're going to have a chance to talk about some of these activities, and I know Melissa is such a fantastic teacher. I know she's going to have a lot to share with us in the chat room, but that's a really important thing, and I see that, you know, our participants are saying sometimes, right? We're really busy with that, so that is something that's very important. What I would also like to talk about next is this thing called reporting out. So for the benefit of those of you who may not be familiar with a typical POGIL activity, let me just quickly summarize what would happen in the student groups before reporting out would occur. So as Lori said, POGIL activities follow the learning cycle. So when you look at a POGIL activity, there's usually at least two models, which could be diagrams or data that the students are directed to observe carefully. And then we have exploration questions that ask about the model. The students are then directed to concept invention questions and finally to application questions in the activity. Along the way, there are key concepts that the authors have designated with, as you would guess, a key symbol, and designated places to stop in the activity with a stop sign. So good facilitation of POGIL activities require teachers to help students work effectively in their specific roles in cooperative groups. And when signaled by a hand signal or a flickering lights or chimes, however you determine works best in your classroom, they then turn their attention to the teacher. And so being a good facilitator means being able to go back and forth between student-directed and teacher-directed moments in the classroom. So as I mentioned earlier, the crown jewel of a POGIL activity is the reporting out. Reporting out is when the teacher temporarily stops group work and asks students to give either an oral or a written accounting of a specific question from the activity. So this could be at a stop symbol or at a key symbol or some other question in the activity that the teacher is deemed important enough to warrant a reporting out. So reporting out is the beef of the POGIL activity because this is one very important way of revealing student thinking. So one key factor that is common in most reporting out methods is that a highly effective way to handle reporting out is to tell the students before they begin the activity when they will be asked to report out, how they will be asked to report out, which we'll talk about the different methods in just a second, and approximately how long they will have to work in their groups before they will report out. The important thing to stress here is that what the students are reporting out is a communal answer that the groups have worked on collaboratively. This is, of course, why the process skills of cooperative groups is so critically important in POGIL activities. If you want to see an example of a master teacher facilitating this skill, I do hope that you will go to the POGIL website and click on the high school resources, and there you will find our interactive implementation guide. I know that when Lori sent you the reminder of the webinar tonight, she actually put a link to this video. So it's about a 3-minute video of our colleague, Mary Sullivan, who is a chemistry teacher out in Washington State, facilitating a POGIL activity in her classroom. And I highly recommend that you take the time to watch that. So there are two basic categories as to when reporting out will occur. We have reporting out during an activity, and we have reporting out at the end of the activity. There are several different methods of having students report out on the designated questions during the activity. One of the most common is a simple oral reporting. For example, I like to have the person giving the oral report stand when they're speaking. I think that's a good career skill for students. You can use a specific role for this, like if you have a spokesperson role in your cooperative groups, or you can roll the dice and have all the student members on the groups on their toes. Another way is to request a specific group member to report directly to the teacher, so kind of checking in with the teacher for a designated question. And yet another reporting out method is to have the students share a written response with the class. There are several different ways to do this, which we'll discuss later this evening, but this could be as simple as having the group write their answer on the board, or something a little more complex and a little varied using some technology. As we will see, what the teacher hears or sees as a result of this reporting out during the activity is going to determine what happens next in the activity. When students report out at the end of a POGIL activity, the emphasis is more on what has been learned in the activity and is usually more summative in nature. Again, there are many different methods of reporting out at the end of the activity. Students could use a number of methods, such as take it out the door. So, for example, I might say when I'm teaching my chemistry class, what is one thing you learned today about molecular shapes? Or some teachers like to use the 3-2-1 strategy. List or write 3 things you learned today about nomenclature, 2 things that you're unclear about nomenclature, and 1 question that you still have about nomenclature. For the muddiest point, for example, I might say, together as a group, I would like for you to come up with 1 question in the activity that your group had the most difficult time in coming to an agreed upon answer. For a VIP reporting out, very important point, I might have an individual or a group answer a question like, what was the 1 VIP about gas laws that you learned today? There's so many different reporting out methods. Melissa shared with me a few weeks ago that she often has one group report out on the definition of a key word, for example, in the POGIL activity. And then she'll go around the room and have other groups modify that definition as they go. And obviously that's a fabulous idea, Melissa. And I'm sure maybe you all have some things that you use in the classroom that would lend themselves to reporting out in a POGIL style. I would suggest that as a beginning POGIL facilitator that you pick 3 reporting out methods that you feel comfortable with and then rotate these with the class until you get the hang of them, and then you can add more to the mix as you feel comfortable with that skill. So I want to take just a minute to get some feedback from you, and before we start talking about technology, I'd like to ask how much technology do you have access to in your classroom? So I'd like you to take just a minute to respond to this poll. I know that in this country we have a great varied some of our listeners are well equipped, and some have a little. Most of us have some type of access. I think that part of the problem is that, you know, until we get to the point in our classrooms where we have one-to-one technology, we are going to be frustrated with using technology where we have to sign out equipment, right? That's very frustrating. We need to think of our technology as just something that's part of our classroom materials, like a pencil or a notebook, and hopefully we'll get to that soon. I see some of you are using veneer probeware and clickers. That's really nice to have. Sandy, I bet you enjoy that. So let's take just a minute, and I see we have some new participants here. Welcome. I'd like to know, what kind of technology do you use, and how do you use it? One of the things that I know that I'm working on right now with my technology is I'm experimenting with screencasting and trying to flip my classroom. And I am really excited about using my screencasts as kind of a just a good resource for students who are absent and who need a little bit more practice with skills. I also have my classrooms use Google Docs and another social networking website that I'm going to talk about in just a minute called Edmodo. Yes, I know chalk is great. Chalk is great, but sometimes we can improve upon that just a little bit. So about 3 years ago, I was very fortunate to be part of a district initiative in our school district, which resulted in my students having daily access to a computer card in my room. As an older teacher, I certainly did need to utilize technology effectively in my classroom, but I am so thankful that I did, even though the learning curve for me was painful at times and certainly a lot of work. I continue to be just thrilled with the technology tools that are available in the education world that are just fabulous for teachers and students. And one of those, as I mentioned just a minute ago, is a free educational social networking website called Edmodo. I don't know if you have ever heard of Edmodo. It has the look and feel of Facebook that the students are very familiar with, but it's totally secure and controlled by the teacher for classroom use. It's very easy to use and very effective. I use Edmodo in many different ways, but one way that I might use it with reporting out is I would have maybe just even have one computer for each student group, and the recorder, or whichever job you would choose. I would ask that group to then post their group's response on the Edmodo website for the whole class to see. That is a great way of having a record of our reporting out, and that can be used as a springboard for discussions the following day or for another activity. That's also a fabulous way for students who are absent to get the flow of the activity. I'm sure that many of you have other favorite technology tools that you might also suggest work well with reporting out. But I did want to mention Edmodo because I think it's a very powerful technology tool. So checking for understanding is analogous to taking the temperature of student knowledge. We do this as teachers primarily by active listening in a POGIL activity. When a teacher is facilitating a POGIL activity, he or she is constantly rotating around the room, stopping by each group, pausing to listen and observe. Reporting out is another opportunity to reveal student thinking and thereby checking for understanding. Another facilitation skill that I use regularly in the classroom is initializing, say, the recorder's activity as I rotate around the room. That is a good visible sign to me that I have checked in with my group. Sometimes I might offer a comment or a suggestion, but other times just my presence and my nonverbal interaction with the group is reassurance to them that they're on the right track. I will also tell students beforehand which question number will require an initial from me before they continue. Often these are at the stop signs that are embedded in the POGIL activity, and other times I might go through an activity and I might say, you know what, I think the students are going to have a difficult time with that. Maybe at the end of a particularly difficult question or a table, and I might require an initial, a teacher initial at that point before the student groups can continue. So there are, in addition to active listening and various reporting out methods, there are other strategies for checking student understanding. Some of these are techniques that require technology, and others are great no-tech options. I have used all of these and like to vary the techniques in order to keep the POGIL activities fresh for my students and be able to mix it up a little bit. So in using technology, here's just some of the suggestions that I had for checking for student understanding. Teachers who have the use of a document camera could call a student from each group to bring up their activity. This might be the recorder or some other role in that group, and that would then be displayed for the whole class. This is a great way of correcting one group's thinking, or better yet, inviting other groups to hammer out an improved answer, which would cause the other groups to edit their answers. The video on the implementation guide on the POGIL website shows Mary Sullivan utilizing this technique. So again, I would encourage you to watch that video. I also have electronic clickers. You could also use Google Forms for a quick spot check of student understanding with a question or two that I could pose. A no-tech alternative to this would be using red and green cups, thumbs up, thumbs down, using finger symbols to, have students reflect on you very quickly about how well they're understanding or if they're having trouble with a particular part of the activity. We have an electronic device policy in my district which allows students in our school to use their own cell phones. I saw in the chat that some of you do have your students use their cell phones, and I will encourage my students to pull out their cell phones and take a picture of something that I want them to have. In this case, I might have the student recorder have their cell phones take a picture of a data table, for example, in an activity and send it to me so then I could then display it for the rest of the class. No-tech options for checking for understanding are also very effective. For example, many years ago, I had some dry erase boards made for my classrooms, and I often have my students use these for spot checks of student understandings for individuals or for groups. A great tip is to make each student accountable for their own contribution by asking them to use different color inks or markers when they're displaying a group response. Sometimes I will distribute a sticky note or a slip of paper, and when I give the signal, I'll have student groups post a question that they have. I can either have a parking lot poster or a particular area of the board for this, or sometimes I will use this technique for a group evaluation about how their group dynamics is going, so I can get a better feel for their process skills as they work together as a group. So sometimes when the classroom train wreck happens, you're not anticipating it, right? Other times you know that they're going to occur and you're ready for them. Still other times, as a teacher, you might even allow a classroom train wreck to occur for learning purposes. But when you're checking for understanding, sometimes it is apparent that students are off track in a POGIL activity and they are not getting the concepts. This is a time to make adjustments within a POGIL activity. And one way to make an adjustment during a POGIL activity is what we call the mini lecture. So after getting your students' attention focused on you with your practice signal, so you flicker the lights or you raise your hand or whatever signal works for you, you might take the time to deliver content directly to your students. You might do this with each individual group. So you can see in the picture here, I'm actually having a little mini lecture with one of my student groups, or you might choose to do it with the whole class. Sometimes it's appropriate to do a mini lecture during a stop sign or at a key concept. The mini lecture might not just be you talking or using your board. It might be a demonstration or a video clip or an animation. I have often been in the position of watching my student groups get derailed on a question in a POGIL activity and not anticipating that it would happen there. I scrambled to my computer to pull together a quick lecture or to find an animation on my computer. This just happened to me a few weeks ago in class when we were learning about gas laws. I had planned to do a lab after the POGIL activity on gases, but it became obvious during the POGIL activity that I needed an earlier intervention, right? So I pulled up an animation on the gas laws in question and used that as a whole class mini lecture. It worked great, and so then of course I plan to do that at the same point in my later classes. We all know that you know, once you get it down with your first period, by the last period you've got it down and you've got a smooth running classroom. So another very important facilitation for a teacher using POGIL is pacing. Melissa had a fantastic webinar last month that talked a lot about group work, and I know that that Lori taped that. So you should be able to have access to that if you didn't happen to catch that webinar. But another important facilitation skill for a POGIL teacher is to learn how to control pacing of the groups. First of all, I want to say that it's very important to set time expectations beforehand. Chunking of the activity and giving suggested times to completion is a great idea to control the classroom. Stop signs are naturally embedded places to pause, so as writers of POGIL activities, we would put those stop signs in places that we thought was a good place to pause, but a teacher could also choose other places to set goals for. I do usually use the stop signs, but if I recognize a more challenging part of the activity come up, I might want to get the student groups to that point and then take the time to give them tips or hints to help them complete the more challenging questions coming up. Another great facilitation tip is to give students a 2-minute warning before that goal is reached. That speeds up the slower groups and affirms to the other groups that they're on the right track. I use a manager as one of my roles in my classroom groups, and I specifically encourage that person to check the time and keep their groups on target. I will often overhear a positive or constructive comment from a group member who is fulfilling their role particularly well, and then I will say something like, I don't want to embarrass this person, but wow, the manager in group 2 just said blank to his group, and that was a fabulous way to keep the group going in a positive direction. I find that teacher skill to be a very effective way to get the other groups to follow suit, and even if they're faking it to make it kind of frame of mind, that's okay, because practice does make perfect. Pacing tips between groups is also a wonderful teacher skill. You can talk about deputizing members of a faster group and spread them out to help slower groups. You can split up a slower group for the last few questions on a POGIL activity that need to be completed, and you can assign them temporarily to other groups. You can also suggest a struggling group pay a visit to another more efficient group to report back and help that home group. I'm sure that many of you also have other great cooperative group strategies that you could share about how to effectively manage pacing within a POGIL group. So I want to pause just for a minute and ask you guys to reflect upon how often do you utilize small groups in your classroom? And while you're having a chance to respond to that poll, I will say that I really feel that it's facilitation skills that keep teachers from, you know, giving the students more rein in a classroom, and it keeps them in the lecturing mode because they're not comfortable with facilitation skills of working with groups. We all know that it is a teacher skill to be able to help students be able to utilize group work in an effective manner. So as our expertise with teaching increases, we all learn to better link classroom activities with seamless ease, right? That's always my goal, to feel like my classroom experience is with seamless ease. There are many ways to link POGIL activities to a learning task that you will be doing next in your classroom. The use of the extension questions. So for those of you that have seen POGIL activities before, we always have extension questions. Sometimes your more challenging, your more effective, efficient groups will get to those, but I often use those as homework. And that's one way to move on a post-POGIL activity. I usually do not get to extension questions during the regular classroom activity, and maybe Beth and Melissa can respond to that, but I often do assign those as homework. And that is also a great way to integrate the next day's discussion at the beginning of class. I also like to utilize the rolling of the dice. I have a virtual dice that the students love to manipulate on my smartboard, and it makes it like a game, and I will assign each role in the group a number, and if that number comes up, then that person will turn in their activity or the designated question to be evaluated, and then the whole group will get the same grade for that. I really like this tip because it helps to keep my group members on their toes, and it adds incentive that all the members of the group need to have the same response on their POGIL activity, so we get those kids talking about what their answers should be on their POGIL activities. So just as a teacher might use an open note quiz on occasion, I like to use open POGIL quizzes. This is a good way for students to utilize the POGIL activity as a resource, which is always something students need to improve upon. So I praise my students when I see them opening up their POGIL activity. I say, wow, that's a fantastic way to utilize a resource that you have spent time in going through. I like using POGIL activities also as an introduction to new materials. Sometimes I will do a POGIL activity first, and then I'll do a lab. Sometimes I do the lab first, and then I do a POGIL activity, depending on the concept. For example, in my chemistry class, I used the POGIL activity on molecular shapes first, and then we got out the molecular modeling kits and worked with those for a couple of days. I found that the students better understood the molecular modeling activities after going through the POGIL than if I had just given them the kits and had them begin there. Another way to link POGIL activities is through journaling. Journaling is a very powerful teaching tool. Students can be asked to summarize, they can be asked to write an abstract, or reflect upon some concept in the POGIL activity. This can be done at the end of the POGIL activity. If I ran over from the day before and I don't have time to start a new activity, it can be a great way to begin a new day. I have my students keep electronic journals in Google Docs. This is actually their class notebook. It's great because they can access these notebooks in Google Docs from home or school. They can't be lost or left at home or in lockers. The students share their notebooks with me, and on a quarterly basis during the school year, I will randomly select an entry or a date to assess that. Of course, you can do journaling with pencil and paper. I know that we are all hearing a lot about the Common Cores, and it's no surprise that the skills of reading and writing about science are integral in the Common Cores. And this is an area where our post-secondary folks, as well as our folks that are interested in career readiness, are telling us that our students need to improve upon this. So reading and writing about POGIL activities is a fabulous way to link those POGIL activities to what comes next in the classroom. So linking to other formative assessments, POGIL activities can be either used to give students what I call a first coat of paint on important science concepts, or sometimes as a second go-round to deepen their understanding of a concept, or even as a unit review. We need to give our students multiple opportunities for mastery of science concepts. So other formative assessments used in addition to POGIL activities are excellent vehicles for adding additional coats of paint for student understanding. So something as simple as a Venn diagram, for example, on a concept vocabulary word, is an excellent formative assessment following a POGIL activity. I was just reading research on Freyr diagrams. I have a picture of a Freyr diagram, excuse me, on this slide, and how there is a positive correlation between students being able to complete a Freyr diagram and successfully demonstrating understanding of that concept or vocabulary word on high-stakes assessments. So having a student, or either individually or in groups, complete a Freyr diagram is a great formative assessment. You could have your student groups complete a concept map. That's another excellent activity that would add another coat of paint on student understanding. I would also recommend the book, and I see Melissa talking about this in the chat, this book called Science Assessments by Paige Keeley. The author gives a ton of excellent formative assessments and implementation tips in the book, and I would highly recommend that. So I want to ask you guys, what importance do you regard formative assessments? I'm sure that your school district is talking about formative assessments and their value in helping uncover student thinking. You know, too often I think that we're focused on the summative assessments because those were where our high stakes pressure goes, right, on our teaching. But the formative assessments can just be so important to help us understand what students are thinking, while we can still alter our methods of teaching to be able to help those students in being able to correct any misunderstandings that they might have. So I see that you guys agree that formative assessments are very important. So maybe we'll take just a minute to chat a little bit about what your feelings are on the importance of formative assessments in a POGIL or a group activity. I think that one of the things that is so valuable about activities like this webinar is just having a chance to listen to other teachers' ideas. You know, visiting other classrooms and visiting other teachers and talking to other teachers about what they're doing is really a great way to, you know, share what we've learned. For example, you guys know a lot about POGIL now, and also to be able to just talk about formative assessments and how we think those are very important in education. So I'm going to take just a minute and maybe see if I can answer some of these questions that I have, that you guys asked me. POGIL workshops at NSTA, maybe Lori can talk more to that at the end of our webinar. I know that we have some of the POGIL people from HSPI are presenting at a lot of their state conventions. I know, for example, I'm going to be presenting a POGIL workshop at our Pennsylvania State Science Teacher Association meeting. I also know that if you contact the POGIL office, then we will work with your school district about getting someone to come to you. Maybe you could even get together with a couple of different school districts and pool resources to be able to have a POGIL trainer come out to your group.
Thank you very much, Lee. I appreciate all that great information that you shared with us. As far as NSTA, I am not really sure if we are sending somebody or not, but you can check out the POGIL website to see all of the locations that we will be showing up in the upcoming months. So if anybody has any last questions for Lee or Melissa, this is your opportunity. You can ask them in the chat window if there was anything that that maybe popped in your head, and this is your opportunity to let us know if we've covered all of our bases, or if there's something that that maybe has become something you want to ask or talk about, or see what other people have to offer. So I'll give you a moment if you want to type something into the chat window. We are here to answer your questions. And I do want to, I know we've said this a few times, that our website is kind of our anchor for how we disseminate the information that we have to give to you. So that kind of anchors us in. That's where we have our best connections. And so as part of joining the webinar, you became part of, you set up a POGIL account, and so that's a good way for you to network and find out what other people are doing. And if you need LinkedIn, you can always call us here at the POGIL office to help you if you're struggling or need to make some connections that will help you kind of go to the next level with POGIL. So you can go to our resources tab on the POGIL website for some specific resources related to HSPI and some of the materials we examined tonight. In particular, there's the HSPI implementation guide, which goes through many things step by step to help give you kind of a practitioner's guide to give you ideas that will help motivate you and help you to set goals for yourself that will enable you to make POGIL work easier and make it more clearer for you, and help you to notice some opportunities where POGIL would fit nicely into your curriculum. And so we also have selected references and related links on our website that will help you find other printed materials related to POGIL. So I see we have, how about a searchable online database of POGIL activities, or maybe just one thing about that is if you do Google POGIL activities, just know that those are activities that might be written by a practitioner or someone who has come up with ideas on their own. The official POGIL endorsed that specifically go through the learning cycle, those are the ones that you would see on the Flynn Scientific website. You can purchase through there, and they are very reasonably priced. So that's a good place to start. There are chemistry and biology activities there that can give you that can get you started. But I do know if you would Google it that you would come up with some individuals who have put together some POGIL-like activities. So just be aware of how POGIL kind of encompasses all parts of the learning cycle, and think about, if you're using somebody else's materials, how you can make sure that it's covering all those bases.
And actually, if I could just add one thing to that, to what Lori just said. I know as an AP biology teacher with the College Board revisions of the AP curriculum, and I saw that some of our participants also teach AP biology, I know how we are really scrambling for resources, right? So the AP biology collection from Flynn is going to be available just in another few months. I think it's supposed to be out maybe in September. And, you know, wow, for $49.99 to get 30 plus classroom tested activities with a teacher guide, and then we give you the CD of the PDFs of the student activities, it is a bargain. So AP biology teachers, be watching for that AP collection that'll be coming out in a couple of months.
Okay, great. And thanks to everybody for really opening up in the chat and being able to share what's going on in your classrooms. I think that makes this a very valuable experience when you can talk to each other and get to network with people who are struggling the same ways you are, or who you can offer your experiences. That just makes it a really great experience. So here's the webinar calendar that we just followed, and as you see, this is the last of our series. And so hopefully if you have attended one or all of these, you found them to be helpful to you and insightful, and that it has helped you maybe motivate you more to find new ways to make POGIL work even better in your classroom, or if you don't use it already, to go ahead and give it a try and to be motivated and know that there are resources available to you. So the first three the recordings are available, and tonight's will be made available very soon. And the April one might also be posted, so you want to check that out on the website. And it's embedded right into the implementation guide. If you're looking for them, just get onto the implementation guide, and that will show you where you can link to these recordings. So again, I just want to thank you for participating. If you want a hands-on POGIL learning experience, we keep talking that you can go to our events page of our website so that you can get a more hands-on experience, so you can see how it actually works with real live people, and how it progresses through specific activities that might give you ideas for your own classroom. And if you have any other questions, you can direct them to Marcy Dubroff, who's the Associate Director of POGIL, and there's her email, marcy.dubroff@pogil.org. If you have any questions, or if you're looking for information to find a POGIL workshop near you. So thanks to everybody. Thank you to Lee and Melissa for all of your great information and insight. And I hope you've enjoyed this evening's presentation. Have a good evening.